What do you do when you lose hope? What do you do when you lose hope? How you answer that question is really important. Just this past week, I got a text message from a really good friend of mine about a guy that I know. A guy I've known for a very long time. When I knew him, he was like elementary age. He was young. I moved away from the city where he lived, where his family lives, but know his family, love his family dearly. Get a text message last week that this guy, who now is 24 years old, had died. And you know what happened? He committed suicide. He got to that point where something happened, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know what happened, but he lost hope. He lost hope, and he couldn't see a way out. The only way he could see out was to take his own life. And so the reason I'm excited, if I can use that word, to be here tonight and talk about depression is because this is a big deal. And it's a really big deal for you guys. We all know on one level or another level, right? We all know a little bit about what this feels like, about what it feels like to get depressed, what it feels like to get down, what it feels like to be low. Everybody has bad days, so everybody knows in one sense what this is like. But what happens when you get to that point where you lose hope, where you feel like you are without hope? That's another level, and that's this thing we're talking about tonight called depression, where if you can imagine this, and some of you maybe you can. In fact, chances are some of you can. Imagine what it feels like to have nothing to look forward to. What it feels like to have nothing for which you can say you're grateful for. What it feels like to not be able to find joy or pleasure in the things that you would normally and you should feel joy and pleasure in doing. Like, that's what we're talking about when we talk about depression. Here's what I want you to know. This is crazy. The National Alliance on Mental Illness, they say that suicide is the second leading cause of death among people the age of 15 to 24. So that's you guys, right? So let's just do this to make it super real. Then how many people we got in the room? 40. 40? All right, everybody stand up real quick. All right, now I'm gonna randomly just pick 8 of you. All right, so pay attention real quick. So you, let's go you, that's 3, 4, 5, I'll go 6, I'll go 7, and I'll go 8. All right? If I didn't pick you, sit down. All right, so they say 20% of people your age have suicidal thoughts. That means they think about, that they've gotten to that point where they have this question, right? Like, I don't know, I've lost hope. I don't know what to do. And they say 20% of people your age, so that's about 8 of you in the room, right? If my math is right or close to right, have had thoughts like that. Now, it may not be these 8, but it's 8 of you, right? All right, now let's have 4 of you sit down. So let you 2 guys sit down. That's 2. You sit down, and you sit down. All right? They say 10% of people your age actually make an attempt on their life. So in a room like this, with 40 of you, imagine if this week 4 of your friends did that. I mean, that's how real this is. These aren't made up numbers. This is like real life right now. You guys have a seat. So you get this, right? Chances are either some of you have either been depressed, some of you are going to be depressed, and the rest of you are going to probably know somebody who is depressed. And what I want to do tonight is to hopefully give you some ideas, some tools, some things to put in your pocket that you can know and understand that maybe will help you or help somebody you know if they ever get to that point where they're feeling that low. And it may be good to just kind of point this out, right? That there's a difference between feeling sad and feeling depressed, right? It's one thing to say, oh, I'm so depressed today. You know, you're not really depressed, but you're just feeling down, right? Or to say, man, I'm having a bad day, or I'm just feeling terrible, I'm feeling crummy, it's just been a terrible week, or a terrible month, or a terrible just season in my life. Like, I want you to know that's normal. It's normal to be sad, it's normal to feel down, it's normal to have bad days, it's normal to have bad weeks, it's normal to have bad months. That happens to people. That's one thing. Being depressed is different. And if you've ever been there, know someone who's been there, you understand this a little bit. It's kind of like, well, last week, Will calls me from school. His car won't start, right? Dead battery. Anybody ever had this happen to you where your car won't start? Yeah, you know what it sounds like? You turn the key, right? And maybe the lights come on a little bit, they flicker, the AC kind of blows a little bit, and you try to crank it. What sound does it make? Can somebody do that? What does it make? You can make me do it? Yeah. It kind of goes that womp, 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 womp sound, you know, it's like it's trying to crank, but it won't crank. That's depression. It's when you just can't do it. Last year, a friend of mine, really good friend of mine, going through a really terrible thing in his life. And he's an adult. He's in this 15 to 24. He's on the top end today. He's in his 20s. He got so low, so down, so depressed. He could not get out of bed. His dad had to fly in from another country, come and find him. Was literally, his father was on his knees beside his bed, just stroking his hair. His son wouldn't sleep. He couldn't sleep. He just literally could not get out of bed. Engine wouldn't start. Sometimes they call it, you don't have the want tos. Like, you know what you should do, but you just don't want to. You just can't. You just can't get there. You can't, for whatever reason, right? It can be for a lot of different reasons. That's what we're talking about. That kind of heaviness, that kind of darkness, that kind of weight, that kind of just down and out depression. That's what we're talking about. And some of you have been there, some of you know people who are there, who have been there, and some of us are going to be there one day, and everybody else, we're probably going to know somebody. You might be tempted to think it's a bit of a new problem. It feels like a new problem in some ways, because it feels like there's more and more people that are experiencing anxiety and depression more than ever before. I know one of you talked on anxiety a couple of weeks ago. Who did that? Did an awesome job. I watched part of it. Fantastic. Yeah. It feels like more people than ever are suffering from anxiety and depression than ever before. Maybe that's true. I don't really know. I do know it's not a new problem. I can take you back further, but I can take you back 3,000 years and prove to you that as far back as 3,000 years, people have felt really, really depressed. Some of you know a man by the name of King David. You know the story? King David did a lot of incredible things in his life. He faced a lot of different giants in his life. But one of those giants that he faced, and I would suggest on more than one occasion, was this giant, this demon called depression. I want to show you, some of you guys know, he wrote a lot of the Psalms. I want you to hear just a few things that David wrote in the Psalms, and you tell me if I'm wrong. I think this guy knew a little bit about depression. Psalm 6, David writes this: "Have mercy on me, O Lord, for I am faint. Heal me, O Lord, for my bones are in agony. My soul is in deep anguish. How long, O Lord, how long? I'm worn out from all my groaning. All night long I flood my bed with weeping and drench my couch with tears. My eyes grow weak with sorrow. They fell because of all my foes." You got to be in a pretty dark place to write that, right? Psalm 13. David again writes this: "How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with all my thoughts, and day after day have sorrow in my heart? How long will my enemy triumph over me?" I mean, this guy, he knew what it was like to be just You ever been there like on the floor where someone would have to just scrape you up? You're so low. Listen to this. Psalm 18. He writes, "The cords of death entangled me. The torrents of destruction overwhelmed me. The cords of the grave coiled around me. The snares of death confronted me." Is it just me, or is he having suicidal thoughts here? I mean, he's wrestling with that question, what do I do when I lose hope and the only way he can see out is death? If you ask me, David knew something about depression. And by the way, this is the same David that defeated Goliath. This is the same David that wrote so many of the psalms that are the worship songs and the prayers that the people of God still sing and still pray today. This is the same David who's known as a man after God's own heart. And you read what he wrote. We don't read these psalms in church, do we? We read all the happy ones. You read the rest of what he wrote. He wrote some pretty dark stuff. He knew what it was like to feel down. He knew what it was like to feel depressed. And think about this. David, a man after God's own heart. Did you know that it's possible to experience depression but not be defeated by depression? Let me take it one step further, and I really want you to hear this. Did you know that it's possible to be depressed, okay, and not be devalued by God? I say that because of this. When you get that low, when you feel that depressed, chances are these are the thoughts running through your head. 1, I'm done with God. 2, more likely, I think God is done with me. Whenever you get into that dark place and you feel depressed, what happens is you begin to believe the lie, and it's a lie. You begin to believe the lie that God doesn't love you, that God can't love you. In fact, nobody loves you.